Hello, everyone, and welcome to my sixth and last webinar with OTF this school year. I'm so excited that you're here. We have more than 20 people taking time out of their very busy schedules in the midst of EQAO and report cards and maybe one more PA day and a beautiful day outside. Everyone wants to be out opening the pool. So thank you for joining me here tonight with OTF Connects to talk about interactive classrooms with augmented reality, some computational thinking, some QR codes, and I certainly recognize quite a few names in the chat box, so that's super cool to see that again. Let's try, let's just finish, if this is your first OTF webinar, there is a checkbox icon under your name towards the top. If this is your first OTF webinar, can you please hit the green check mark yes? And if you've had an OTF webinar before, go ahead and hit the red X. Again, that's just under your name. And there's quite a few yellow and red bandwidth stuff happening here. Okay. 3 to 7 so far, 3 to 8. So majority are new, which is fantastic because that means that the OTF is spreading the word about this free professional development opportunity that they are offering after school and at night. And they're on their way with planning for next school year as well, so stay tuned for that. As well, I'm going to do a little shameless plug before we start. OTF is doing some on-site summer conferences this summer, and I'm running 2, both on coding and computational thinking, one in Niagara Falls, one in Toronto, towards the end of July, and you can find those on the OTF website. There's a whole slew of really cool activities happening this summer and a variety of things planned for next school year as well. So keep an eye on the OTF website. Follow the Twitter account if you don't already, because they actively share the sessions as they get close to that date. Susan is also running 2 this summer. I believe one is in London. I can't remember where the second one is, but I highly recommend those ones. Check them out. Really cool stuff happening all summer long this summer. So it looks to me like we are almost split, I think, on the number of people that are new and the number of people that have been here before. Susan's also presenting in Niagara Falls, so maybe our paths will cross, which is awesome. Jennifer says, I've already registered for Niagara Falls, and I hope she means mine or Susan's, but preferably mine or Susan's. Just kidding. David says he has no audio. It could be my bandwidth. It could be yours. We're super flexible on these things. One thing I want, because we do have 22 people currently, if you're lost or I sound like a chipmunk, which can happen, hit the little hand where you raise your hand. If you can go ahead and try that now, you can raise your hand, which indicates you have a question, and a little number will show up beside you indicating the order in which the hands were raised. Feel free to do that at any time, because I actually hear a ding in my headset. So if I'm off on a different slide or a different page, I still hear the audio prompt that somebody is completely lost or just wants me to stop, because I tend to ramble too much. You'd think I'd have this figured out by my 6th webinar, but still, I'm talking to a computer screen, assuming there's people on the other end laughing at my terrible jokes, and I have no idea if you are. Hit the hand if I go off on a tangent or you get lost, because Erasmus is very new, can be a little bit complicated, and just want to make sure that we're all on the same page as we roll through this presentation tonight. So I put together this slide deck. I was asked if I'd be interested in sharing something about interactive classrooms with QR codes after my article in Professionally Speaking about interactive bulletin boards, and I absolutely was more than happy to do this and thrilled to be invited back for another OTF session. The interactive bulletin board piece in Professionally Speaking was actually written last summer. OCT spends a long time putting their stories together, obviously, and it's a quarterly magazine. So as I finished last school year, I was looking at ways to sort of evolve my classroom from QR codes to that next piece and what that might be as QR codes started to become more commonplace, I guess. So I started looking at augmented reality and really loved the Aurasma app. So I hope to share both of those pieces tonight. I'm going to assume, which is never a good idea, that people have some idea of QR codes, but I will also assume that some don't. So I'm going to run through the QR code piece first. It shouldn't take more than hopefully about 20 minutes, and then I thought maybe we could spend a good half an hour, 35 minutes on Erasmus, and then there's some really cool apps at the end that we can use in science classrooms at the elementary and secondary level. And I wanted to have a little brainstorming session so that you can challenge my thinking and you know, share some of your ideas as well that I think would help this whole thing, because it is being recorded and we can all use it again later on in the week. So I will pause every once in a while and check out the chat box because it does roll fast. If you've ever been on a Twitter chat, they roll super, super quick. So I will try and follow along there. If I do pause my microphone, it's only because I'm taking a drink of water and you probably don't want to hear that. So don't think that your audio has gone off. I will pause my mic when we're sharing videos or we're brainstorming some other stuff. Okay? So just a side note there, Susan, David is, I just asked David to jump on. He probably didn't register just because of the timing, but I figured there'd be space having done these before. Okay, so computational thinking is an algorithmic process that generalizes a solution to open-ended problems. And I really want to talk about some of the research of computational thinking, just because from what I'm reading on the internet, on Twitter and social spaces and PD activities, we keep talking about creating content. And I think that's a fabulous idea, but why are we doing that? Why are we creating content? Well, the biggest argument is that so-called factory model of schooling that we're sort of evolving away from, where it's less regurgitation of content in a timed setting because we're not preparing kids for that kind of an industry, and more to an environment of creating content and sharing content in the world. But let's look at why that's actually important. So computational thinking is an algorithmic process that generalizes a solution to open-ended problems. We all acknowledge that open-ended problems encourage full, meaningful answers based on multiple variables, which require using decomposition, data representation, generalization, modeling, and algorithms. And I always like to start with that definition because if you really look at that second part, it's all math. Everything in there is mathematics, and computational thinking and coding and creating content with technology, it all really follows under the umbrella of the mathematical process which exists in our curriculum document at the beginning of every grade. Seymour Papert was doing computational thinking in the 80s and 90s. He really didn't coin that term, but he truly believed in having kids doing kinesthetic activities in order to understand the algorithmic process behind solving a math problem. And then he would have kids replicate that process on a computer using the logo programming language that he developed. That sort of very first block-based coding language before Scratch developed at MIT back in the 80s. Now, the term computational thinking really gained traction in 2006 when Jeanette Wing was doing some research alongside Microsoft, and she wrote a very pivotal paper. In this paper in 2006, she defined computational thinking as critical thinking plus the power of the computer or technology. She used the word computer at that time. Today it would be more broad-based. Critical thinking plus the power of technology to solve problems in ways we couldn't prior. Jeanette Wing stated in 2006 that computational thinking, it's no longer a skill just for computer scientists, but for the society at large, because by 2020, we will have more objects connected to the internet than people with the Internet of Things. And I like to think of the Internet of Things like the way my dad taught me to drive a car, and he taught me to check air pressure, and he taught me to check the oil, and he taught me to change the oil and how to pump gas. And so we're going to have all of these things in our lives connected to the Internet. In some capacity, it would be a viable skill to be able to support them and even troubleshoot them when they go wrong. In other words, your fridge might Instagram you a picture of a dirty water filter telling you it might need to be changed. Your stove might Snapchat you a picture of the oven when it has reached the temperature you set it to. And for the first time in human history, we will have more vehicles connected to the internet than not. Self-driving cars alone will eliminate thousands of jobs, but thousands of new jobs will be created to support these technologies. We have drones. We have automation happening right at McDonald's as well. That front sort of desk the front counter clerk sort of position at McDonald's is being replaced by touchscreen. So let's talk about computational thinking and why it's important. And this is a fantastic visual that came from an article I was reading. I can provide this for you if you want to read it. It came from an article about high school science classrooms, and there's such an overlap between mathematical thinking and computational thinking. And if we really want to focus on problem solving, modeling, analyzing, interpreting, and statistics and probability, then we also have to look at computational thinking, because there's room for that to sort of exist. So tonight I want to talk about the simulation piece, I think, with augmented reality. Certainly gaming is in there, algorithmic reasoning, coding, robotics, programming, networking, all of that stuff is there. But tonight we're going to focus sort of on that simulation piece where we can use augmented reality to bring mathematical principles to life and offer kids a bigger visual. The term computational strategies is already in our math curriculum. It's been there since 2004 when the document was released. Our interpretation of it just has to change, but over a decade ago, computational strategies was listed in our math documents as a strategy and a tool to solving problems in the math process listed at the beginning of every grade's curriculum expectations. And I really like to explore this area. My practice has shifted from grading specific expectations to exploring, observing, having conversations about specific expectations, but really focusing on that mathematical process and pulling out the learning skills as these kids are exploring these math tasks. Because when you look at an elementary report card, you can predict the grades that are on the inside by looking at the learning skills, right? If a student has E's and G's, they're going to be A's and B's. And if a student has S's and N's on the front page of an elementary report card, then they're going to be C's and D's, generally speaking, on the inside of the report card. So if we could perhaps rethink our assessment and evaluation and look more in depth at those learning skills and the problem-solving process and the mathematical process, then perhaps we might see a direct result to an improvement of math scores and a reduction of mathematical anxiety when we build that sort of confidence with our kids. So the objective tonight, I want to look at student engagement. That's a big push with my school board. We believe in engaging students. Engaging students reduces behavior, and kids buy into their own schooling and what they're doing, and they truly believe in it. So how can we engage students with activities that have a low mathematical floor, allowing engagement with minimal prerequisite mathematical knowledge and high mathematical ceiling, so that concepts and relationships may be extended to more complex connections and more varied representations? This was defined by George Gaddanitis at Western University in 2012. Another way of looking at low floor, high ceiling problems that have multiple entry points. So kids of different abilities can approach a similar math task and all be successful because there's some way that they're able to engage in the activity and produce some sort of solution to a problem. George defines those low floor, high ceiling tasks as wide walls, which is more of a linear way of looking at it versus a vertical way, but sort of that same definition to really rich problems that allow all students to have an opportunity to engage in it because it covers such a wide range of different skill level abilities. So I use QR codes to engage my students in mathematics for a variety of reasons. I can hide information behind them. I can hide student solutions in QR codes. It provides a little bit of confidence when I can have all kids in my class provide a mathematical solution hidden behind a QR code, because you don't know whose it is or what it says until you actually scan it. It becomes a little bit more anonymous. For those of you that don't know, a QR code is a two-dimensional code. They're actually 20 years old, but you scan them using a smartphone or a tablet in order to retrieve the information that's been buried in it. It was first defined or sort of developed in 1994, and has since we've created, as a species, human beings have created, what's the word I'm looking for now? My mind's drawing a blank. That word, it's, the word to define that everybody follows that same standard. I'm drawing a blank. Come on, somebody raise a hand or throw it in the chat box. We've created a standard of QR codes so that any app can scan any QR code, because people that create QR codes followed that sort of standard. I don't even know if standard is the right word. There's a word that I'm missing. It'll come to me by the end, I promise. So there's a gazillion ways to scan a QR code. I've had a success with Enigma. The norm. Thank you, Natalie. Norm is fine. Norm is a great word. So there's a norm around QR codes that we all sort of follow this process when we're creating them so that all apps are able to read them. Convention, that's another great example. Norm, convention, standard, exactly. So you get what I'm saying. I will be quiet on that point right now. So I use Enigma. I've had a lot of success with Enigma. There are a million ways to scan QR codes. Enigma has been successful in my opinion. If you don't already have a QR code scanner, grab the iTunes one there, or the Windows Store version, or the Android version from the links listed, because we are going to use them throughout this slide deck. So in 1994, it was an automotive company out of Toronto that actually developed QR codes as a way to store a lot of information in a really tiny space, because they would stamp QR codes on parts and ship them all over the world, and it was a way to track them. It actually then moved into the computer industry, and these QR codes were stamped on computer parts like CD-ROMs and computer memory, because you could then identify it almost like a product label, because it's universal. There it is, a universal code across the globe where everyone could scan the QR code with any app and retrieve the information that was in it. So I've used QR codes to create interactive bulletin boards. We were discussing about 4 years ago how to, I don't know if rebrand is the right word, but sort of reevaluate our bulletin board space, as we were starting to move away from honor walls and word walls and those sort of spaces, and we thought, how can we engage kids into those spaces? So we looked at the idea of creating QR codes and having kids being able to scan something on a physical space, you know, in the hallway or in the classroom, so they could retrieve information about a book or a math strand. One case in particular, I took an old bulletin board. This was about 3 years ago now, and I basically mapped out the entire strand of math, because I was teaching math as, you know, siloed, isolated strands in those days, and I would sort of map out the strand. So the first QR code might be a diagnostic activity that kids would do at their own pace, and I could then check the results at home. So my bulletin board almost became that flipped classroom where kids would come to school and scan the content on the bulletin board and do the work that was there, and then I would go home and I could see the stuff they had posted. So that first QR code might have been a diagnostic activity at the time on Poll Everywhere or Socrative or something like that, and the kids could scan it and do a quick quiz. The next QR code in my math classroom could have been an introductory video from something like Khan Academy that would have showed, you know, the entire strand in a 6-minute visual right from the get-go. And then the next QR code could have taken them to the textbook, because I was saving them as PDFs at that time and posting them on our Google Classroom. The next QR code could have went to one of those wide walls, low floor, high ceiling activities. Because I do still use the textbook. The system, you know, our system hasn't caught up to open-ended math across the board, so still use the textbook and still provide those wide walls questions to sort of supplement what's happening in the textbook. But then the last QR code would have been my assessment piece, and I really started to realize that it's okay for kids to, you know, cover this strand of math at their own pace, and if one student hits that assessment piece right away, that's okay, and it's my job to sort of challenge them on those next steps. And if another student takes a long time to get to that place but still gets to that assessment piece, that's great. So I really found that I used QR codes as a quick way to map our entire strand, but from a physical space in the classroom, which allowed for those kinesthetic activities, because kids had to get up and move around the room in order to do it. That evolved to about 1.5 years ago. I had kids then take their place on the honor wall. So the honor wall, if you're not familiar where I'm from, the honor wall is that front of the fridge place where kids would post work that they are proud of, right? But you always have those kids who don't want to post anything. There's a lot of anxiety with that, and I understand that. So we sort of rebranded the honor wall and had kids create QR codes that linked to their own portfolios. So now we've got this bulletin board of QR codes instead of posted student work, and the QR codes would link to the kids' portfolios. But their portfolios included whatever artifacts they wanted to share. It could have been coding in Scratch, it could have been making an iMovie, it could have been a green screen or an explain everything, or it could have been pictures of mathematics done on lined paper, and that was totally okay. And I really started to understand this differentiation piece and that personal learning piece and kids being proud of different artifacts, but allowing them to create different artifacts first. And so my honor wall has sort of evolved into that kind of a space where scanning it would lead you or mom, right, at student-led conferencing to that student's portfolio. So that leads me to engaging in a math story. So when I use my textbook now, because there's some really great questions in the textbook, I just supplement it with rich media. And so using children's literature to introduce, reinforce, or extend mathematical ideas is incredibly important, and the connections that students make with mathematical predicaments of the characters in the story create a much more emotionally intense and hence mathematically more engaging and memorable learning experience. It also came from Western University in London, Ontario. But let me give you an example. So the second bullet on this slide, what is the largest rectangular area of a fence you can build with 24 meters of fence? 5 years ago, I would have asked the question, not even a question, list the factors of 24. That was what I would have pitched to my students 5 years ago. And reading Dr. Marion Small's work, and as I researched more in mathematics, I've started to understand that how we ask questions has a significant impact on student solutions. So instead of asking for a direct list of factors of 24, what is the largest rectangular area of fence you can build with 24 meters of fencing? And of course, you're going to get a whole variety of different shapes and things like that. But today, I now supplement that question with a narrative. So Derby the dog has been given 3D printed prosthetics to help him walk and run. Now that he is able to move, he needs your help building the fence. I'm going to pause my audio. I'm going to give you 3 minutes to watch Derby's story by scanning that QR code. When you're done, please come back, hit the green check mark so I will know that everybody has finished watching that video. But this is an example of how I engage students in this math question by throwing a quick QR code up there that links to an existing YouTube video that I didn't create. I just spent a few minutes on my prep finding that content to sort of bring this mathematics question to life with some rich media. So more than just hiding information in a QR code, actually really bringing that worldly authentic mathematics back to a question that I've always asked. I just reworded how I asked that question. Like I said, I still use my textbook. I just sort of reword some of the explain how or list kinds of questions in that math book. So anyway, I'm done talking. Hi, Nicole. Apologies there. The device that you're watching on Blackboard is, you're probably going to want a second device. I don't know if you have a phone handy. Scanning a QR code that's on your iPad obviously is the problem here. Sorry, I didn't realize that was the issue, but I use my phone to scan my iPad, so hopefully that you have those options, or if you can open this session maybe on a computer and then use your iPad to scan that. Okay, sorry about that. In terms of this story in particular, so it's really not a lot of work. I would spend 3 minutes on a prep, finding this YouTube video, creating a QR code, and then posting the QR code on the story. But imagine the opportunities to extend it into your language arts program. I mean, they talked about 3D printing, and we're into media and purpose and audience, and there's so many ways that you can be cross-curricular in math with very little effort, because there's so much content out there now. So here's a quick example. So again, 5 years ago I would have said list the factors of 24, and the kids would have said 124, 212, 38, and 46. And so then I started to rethink how I asked that question, what's the largest rectangular area you could build, and they would explore it. And now I'm to the point where I can totally engage the enriched media. And this one question becomes a 40-minute math lesson. We spend 5 minutes watching the video. You know, we talk about character traits of that animal and the people that have adopted that animal. And then maybe we spend 20 or 25 minutes looking at this math problem, and 5 or 10 minutes for that gallery walk consolidation piece at the end. So instead of what I used to do is ask kids to list the factors of multiple composite numbers in a 40-minute period, I evolved to this place where I asked them one really great question that I think has those multiple entry points and different ways to engage kids. This possible solutions slide is something I would post on the Smartboard, and if you want to go ahead and try the text tool, just to give you an idea, I would have kids come up and they would write something like this, 1 by 12 or 2 by 6, or they would draw pictures on that shared space. So go ahead and type on there what possible solutions you think your students or your own kids at home might come up with as I'm talking. So this is posted. I would project it on my Smartboard, or even use a chart paper or a chalkboard if I don't have one. But again, that pro tip, how to build a fence, if you look to the top right of this slide, that's just something fun I actually threw in. If you actually scan that QR code, it's going to take you to Home Depot's website, where Home Depot tells you with an explanation video, which again goes to our language arts curriculum, how to write an explanation or a procedure. Home Depot now will tell you how to actually build a fence. So it really dawned on me that for so long I was asking kids to solve problems that involved fence building, and probably not one of them in my grade 7 or 8 class had ever really built a fence. And I started to think about so-called authentic math questions and how that's such a subjective statement, right? So in context, what is authenticity to a kid that's never built a fence, or a kid that lives in the city of Toronto versus where I'm from in Chatham, Kent, where we don't have fences because it's so incredibly rural. So another quick, again, it took me 30 seconds to throw a QR code on there that links to Home Depot, which is super cool, because I bet you're already thinking of the extensions. I mean, you can go purchase material now on Home Depot's website and figure out how much this fence is going to cost to save this dog. And so, one traditional math question has now become this week-long engaging activity that also involves my language arts curriculum. If you hover your scanner over the solution. And by the way, if you look at the 2 QR codes, you can tell there's more data in the solution just by the sizes of the boxes. I've noticed it takes the kids a while to figure that out. So when I talked about hiding student work behind a QR code, I realized that a student who would write 1 or 2 sentences would have big boxes versus a student who wrote a paragraph, like that solution QR code. But I realized that the kids weren't necessarily picking up on that. So I thought that was really great, because they weren't realizing that, little Johnny or Jenny had only written a few sentences. They didn't know that until they scanned it, and it was still anonymous. So anyway, feel free to scan that solution. I'm going to do it right now as I follow along, just so that you get an idea. When I was practicing this the other day, I noticed that QR codes do not scan on a black background. I was having significant issues with that. So something to consider if you have a Smartboard, you want to put a QR code on a very light background. This app in particular just didn't like the dark space around it. So I'm staring at my solution now on my phone. It says the perimeter is 24, and then there are some possible dimensions. Obviously, it's a text file, so you're limited there in terms of the the ability to draw pictures, but that's why I do post this onto the smartboard so kids can come up and do that. But what I love about this process is I am now removed from the equation of, is this right? Because the QR code contains that solution. And so I started to do some research on the immediate feedback piece, also because I'm a big advocate for the coding movement. And when kids code something, it works or it doesn't, and that computer is that immediate feedback piece. So I thought immediate feedback might result in superior performance. Let's do some research around this. If an error is allowed to stand uncorrected, it may be rehearsed, consolidated, and strengthened, and may be more likely to recur than if it were immediately corrected. If feedback is given immediately, the correct answer, rather than an error, can be rehearsed and consolidated. And that came from 2009. And I thought, totally true, makes a lot of sense, and frees up your time to have those conversations. The triangular piece of growing success, the observation, the conversation, the student product. Putting solutions in a QR code gives you those opportunities to free up your time so that you can work with some of the other kids that are, maybe more struggling or things like that. I've had high school students come and, I've given them volunteer hours. They can take what we call Bob, the back of book at my school. Our Nelson textbook has some answers in the back. I've had high school students take Bob and turn it into a QR code and given them some volunteer hours. So they've created some really cool resources for me, which has been absolutely fantastic. So anyway, back to sharing to an authentic audience. I think it's important for our kids to create content, like I said earlier, but I also think it's most important that they share it with an authentic audience, looking for that global feedback. That's something we do in our everyday lives. So I decided to do some research on what that might look like, and here's what I found. So sharing mathematical thinking enhances the sense of audience, motivating and giving purpose to students' learning. Creates a school community links by opening public windows into school learning, and provides an opportunity for students to give their voice to their mathematical identity. I started to think about, we could print QR codes, and I could send home a monthly newsletter of just QR codes to parents, and they could scan this piece of paper that went home, and it's got a portfolio of class work, either by their kid or the entire class, depending on how you set it up. And I thought, what a quick way to send large volumes of content and data to parents. I mean, you could post QR codes on the school sign or at the front of the building or on windows and, all sorts of different places. So let me keep moving forward because I'm spending a lot of time on QR and I really want to hit the augmented reality piece too. Natalie has a question. When students create their portfolio using QR codes, can they create files within it? Great question. So I'm going to show you actually right now how to create a QR code. The kids actually will take their existing work in the internet space and they will actually just link to it in a QR code. So I'm going to do a screen share now, which always makes me sound like a chipmunk because I'm switching from this slide to a web tour. So if it does go black momentarily, that's why, hopefully. And I may have done that really fast. I think Susan had just posted the link to the QR code app builder that I use. It's called GoQR.me. If you want to open that in a web browser, GoQR.me. And I'm not getting a lot of response here, so could you do me a favor? And I'm going to clear. Give me a green check mark if you see my Safari browser trying to load GoQR.me.
Yes, Brian, we can see it trying to load. It's trying and trying and trying.
And I'm a chipmunk, I bet. I sound like that robot thing from Terminator 2.
Yeah, it's a little chipmunky.
Oh, hey, QR code generator. Are we there?
Yes, we are. Looks good.
Well, I tell you what, you are all, okay. I'm not going to touch buttons because it's going to affect our view after this slide, and you are all incredibly smart people. So you'll notice on the left, I'll try and talk through it. On the left, there's about 6 or maybe 9 categories underneath type. It says 1 type and then 2 contents, and then there's a text box. And you should see a globe, which is a web link. So feel free to type something where the globe is. Oh, mine's loaded now. www.myschoolwebsite.com, whatever, brianaspinall.com. And you'll notice on the right side of the page it says loading, 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 loading. Because of my bandwidth, hopefully you folks at home, something will have appeared. So in a QR code, you can put a link to a website. So when somebody scans the QR code, it opens a website. You can put in a body of text. Be leery of that one. There's a character limit on it. It can get really finicky. You want to keep your paragraphs very short. You can put in a V card, which is a business card. So when somebody scans that QR code, it will save your contact in their phone. You can add SMS, their text messaging. You can actually make a phone call from a QR code. So you could put a phone number in, and somebody could scan that QR code, and your phone would automatically call them. You could put in your geolocation. You could actually put in an event, which is a super cool idea. If you're doing something at school, you can post an event, put the date in the QR code, and have students and parents actually scan that. You can put in an email address so that when I scan this QR code, my phone will try and open the default mail app, automatically put your email address in the to line, and I can just quickly send an email, which is something that we use a lot where I'm from. Our Rotary French teacher has kids. She has an iPad cart, but kids don't have one-to-one iPads, so they use a shared mail app. It's really, really simplistic to scan a QR code and have it automatically plunk her email address in the subject line so that students can share whatever they're working on in the moment on a shared device quickly, and then the teacher has it in their inbox, which I think is totally powerful. Wi-Fi, if you were at a conference or running an EdCamp or something and you wanted to share the encryption code really quickly, you could put that information in this QR code. Users could scan the QR code and their device would then connect to the internet without having to type in passwords. I predominantly hang out in the type and the text area. I want kids to quickly access web links like YouTube videos, or I want them to type in that box because I'm sort of disguising what they're writing, if that makes sense, depending on whatever the task might be. If you think about the probability strand of math, I've had students create probability games in the past, but they've hidden their answers in a QR code. Also great for language arts and any subject area for that matter. So that's creating a QR code very, very quickly. I'm going to try and go back to, you probably see a black screen. Bear with me here. I'm going to try and go back to whiteboard sharing. Natalie, can students access QR code from home? Because of that universal standard piece I was talking about, that QR code can be scanned by anyone in the world that has access to it. So the QR codes that I've created today that you're scanning can be scanned by anybody in the world, and it will take them to that content. And all of the QR codes in my slide deck today were all created on that goqr.me site. I didn't go through, it creates the QR code on the right side of that page, and you just simply download it by right-clicking on it and saving it. Or actually, you can right-click on it and copy it and then paste it. So I copy and I paste it into my slides without even bothering to download it. So Google Doc, depending on your sharing permissions, if you've shared it with viewable access to anybody, works flawlessly. So you grab that share link from a Google Doc and post it into goqr.me, and you scan the QR code and it will launch that shared Google Doc. And so I've done that. I love that. If you create a Google Doc where anyone can edit, or anyone with link can edit, or even just can view with those permissions, plunk it into a QR code. Fantastic way to engage everybody in the school. I mean, imagine having a school-wide shared Google Doc if you're asking for student voice in your own building and you wanted kids to give real feedback. You could post a QR code at the front of the school linking to a Google Doc where anybody who scans that will be able to access that document. Or slides, absolutely. Okay, QR codes 101. For the sake of time, you probably all have a million ideas for lesson ideas incorporating QR codes. If we could just quickly brainstorm, we'll spend maybe 30 seconds. If there's something I haven't touched upon, I'd love to hear your ideas and give me some perspective about how it fits in other classrooms. I'm a math, language, and phys ed teacher, so we teach each other subject areas. I would love to hear that as well. If you want to use your microphone, totally cool too. Feel free to use the text box or the whiteboard piece, but let's just sort of generate some ideas of how we can use QR codes to not just engage students, but involve them in the lessons we're actually doing by bringing that authentic piece to them. I'm going to pause my microphone. 30 seconds. See, this always happens, so I said I was going to pause my microphone, and now I see leveled lessons, which brilliant. So differentiating instruction, right? You could have a QR code that links to a different task or a different activity relying on different abilities, or choose your own adventure, or again, student choice. I've never actually done the leveled lessons, and that was a big aha moment for me. So thank you to whoever wrote leveled lessons. I think that offers a really nice way to differentiate instruction quickly and easily, because prep time is very slim and it doesn't take long to create that QR code. So thank you for that. Codes to examples of music or different art. Definitely. I've heard of using QR codes for signing in and out of classroom. That's a really neat idea, I think, if you have to go to the bathroom. A way for students to research and keep ideas readily probably posted or away. Mystery numbers, QR codes with art pieces. I'm not an arts teacher, so this is all fantastic stuff I'm totally going to take away and see how I can actually introduce art into my own classroom, language arts and math, and get kids thinking critically and formulating opinions about things like that. Linking to a Google form, that's a great idea too. Linking to a Padlet, I guess you could do that if you wanted to share that space. Using them for exit tickets to see what they understood from the lesson taught. So you could scan an exit ticket QR code that maybe brought you to a Google Doc or a Padlet or a Today's Meet where they have to answer a question, or even a Google form again. It's something you could post on your, post on your door, I guess. And so here's my next struggle is I'm printing QR codes, and it almost seems a little bit redundant to do that with the number of devices that I have available to me. The idea of projecting a QR code is probably the best way to go, but I still do print them. I still do print them a lot. I found that I've printed QR codes that link to other things like the Ontario homework help website that we have for grades 7 to 12 in math. I have those QR codes posted around my classroom that takes kids directly to those links, or Khan Academy, supplementary resources that support whatever we're doing in classroom. I've had students go home and tell me that they've taken their favorite sports team off of NHL.com and created their own QR code and put it up on their wall, so when they get up in the morning they can scan and see how their sports team did last night, which I think is really cool. Checking the weather in the morning, another way to do that. So anyway, a whole variety of things. I think we're really only scratching the surface of how simple the idea is, but yet how powerful we can make our lessons and engage students and parents and even colleagues in some of the things that we're doing. So let's shift gears and look at augmented reality. So augmented reality to me is QR codes on steroids. You still scan content, but you see the content live instead of going to another place. Augmented reality has been around for a while. Microsoft HoloLens will probably be the biggest product of 2016, in which we see education and virtual reality sort of really crossing paths. And augmented reality and virtual reality there's a big overlap. So virtual reality is immersing yourself in a digital space, and augmented reality is interacting with a physical space to sort of bring digital content back to you. Very similar. but also certainly different as well. So let's talk about augmented reality. And I want to begin with a video that sort of changed the way I look at the world. I saw this video a couple of years ago that PEPSI put out, and they had created an augmented reality bulletin board on the side of a bus station wall. So I'm going to hit clear. I'll give you 3 minutes again, and the video's not very long, so 3 minutes. Go ahead and scan that QR code, or just click the link if you are on a device. And check out the video, the marketing campaign. I love showing this video when I'm introducing students to the Orasma app, because it allows me to also talk about language arts, right? So media and advertising and purpose and audience. PEPSI just forced everybody at this bus station to look at their ad because they all wanted to see how it worked. And I thought, wow, what a powerful piece of technology, and something I think that I truly believe if our textbook companies are going to survive in this day and age, they're going to have to incorporate augmented reality. I think that there's a whole new industry in scanning a Pearson textbook and looking at the particle theory, but have it actually animating on the device by having the device over top of it, in an intermediate science classroom. IKEA is doing it with their furniture now. You can place pictures out of an IKEA magazine on the floor of your space and then use a device to see what that furniture would look like in your device. So I apologize for showing you 2 videos back to back, but just to give you an insight into where we're headed in the future with augmented reality. Another video, it's about 1.5 minutes. I'm going to pause my microphone yet again, clear all the check marks, and just have a look at this one because it's fun. Yeah, class set, 1-to-1 IKEA magazines, class set of IKEA magazines. But I'm going to show how we can actually create content that allows kids to do this. So kids could actually create their own magazines that would sort of bring this stuff to life. We're at 11 out of 24, and I'm probably talking over the videos the others are watching, so I apologize for that. Okay, perhaps the others have just stepped away. That's okay. Let's look at Erasmus. So I'm going to show you an app that I use to have kids create content, and I create content to engage them in simulations and actually bringing these math activities to life, even more so than just QR codes. I mean, QR codes are great, but Erasmus allows us to do some really cool things. So Erasmus, believe it or not, actually 3 or 4 years old. I was put onto it about 3 or 4 years ago, and I played with it at that time. I didn't really see how it fit. I thought it was cool, but I didn't really understand the curriculum. And I've sort of learned, I think, in my own journey how to bring the curriculum into the technology and the technology into that curriculum, so to speak. So Erasmus prides themselves on saying we help people to use augmented reality to turn everyday objects, images, and places into new interactive opportunities to engage with their fans and customers through striking graphics, animation, video, audio, and 3D content. So clearly, you know, teachers are not their target audience. They want rock stars of the world to use the app. That's okay. Let me show you how I use it. So if you could download the app called Aurasma, A-U-R-A-S-M-A, don't click Aurasma.com. You can't get the Aurasma app actually from their website because they try and show some other commercial stuff. But if you just quickly Google Aurasma, I think, Susan, one of our slides did drop from the beginning. I remember having Aurasma as a prompt, unless I totally flaked on that. But look up Aurasma, and I'll just talk about Aurasma as you're downloading it. It looks like a purple, to me it looks like a purple tent, but I think it's supposed to be an A. It's available on Google, it's available on Windows, and it's available on the Android platform. So I'm going to hit clear again, and hopefully we can spend just 20 quick seconds installing that app. It's very simplistic. When you open the app, immediately you're going to see HP as a sponsor and then sort of a moving city across the bottom of the page. One of the things about Aurasma is they've grown significantly in the content on their app. So you actually have to follow people in order to be able to scan the content that they've created. So if you want to see the auras that I've created for my math classroom, you actually have to follow me on the app. And it makes sense when you think about it from a big picture standpoint. There's so much content out there with stock images, like well, let's say a Nike swoosh. If I wanted to scan a Nike swoosh, well, that would take me to a million different things because so many people have created content using the Nike swoosh as a trigger image. So what makes Aurasma different than QR codes is you actually take a picture of something that becomes the trigger image that links to that digital content. So it might be a coffee mug in your classroom. It might be a book cover. You have to be careful, though, about the way you orient those objects. If they get moved, the app won't like it because it won't recognize it from the trigger image. So I personally use stock photos, or I take screenshots of videos so that I know that all the kids will see that image the same way so that their app will respond the way that I want it to. If you could please just give me a green check mark that you've got Aurasma installed, that would be great, because we can't really go any further until that's possible. So great, 4, 5, 6, okay, perfect. So none of you have bandwidth issues, it must just be me. So when you open Aurasma, I'll go slow, I promise. You'll see Discover Aurasmas at the top. At the bottom, right above your home button on your phone, you'll see crosshairs that indicate you want to scan something. It reminds me of the big button on Snapchat. We don't want to hit that button. We're not going to scan just yet because you have to actually follow me before you can see the content I've created. So when you do open the app, at the top you'll see Discover Auras, and I want you to type in Aspen Aber. That's just my 6 and 2. That's our logins at school, my last name and my first 2 initials. When you type in Aspen Aber, I believe you will see 5 things listed. I just created this account for this slide deck. And you want to follow the very top one. It says Aspena's Public Auras, and when you click on it, I have 5 likes currently and 3 auras. And you'll see Handshake, Circumference, and Getting Started as 3 trigger images. So go ahead and follow that account. I promise this is not a pyramid scheme. You do have to follow me to see my content. If you can't see Discover Auras, you're probably in the scanning window. You might see some dots moving into the center of the screen and back out. Click on the magnifying glass at the bottom, and you should see some thumbnails listed, and then Discover Auras as a search bar at the top. This is where webinars tend to be. It's easier to do it in person, right, if we're all in the same room. So go ahead and raise your hand if you need me to stop or we're going to troubleshoot through this. I did this activity with my class again this week, and of course it took us a good 10 minutes to all sort of get on the same page, so that's okay. We're down to 30 minutes. Kaylee, I hope I'm saying your name right. Kaylee, were you okay with the Discover Auras? Did you find it? There was a problem. Please try it again. It's probably bandwidth at that point. I did have my entire class on this week. Orasma is great about multiple people connecting to the same spot. I haven't had issues with that, so hopefully it's just something related to internet speeds where you are. Could you go ahead and give me a green check mark if you've now successfully followed me on the Orasma app? No, sorry. I guess, Susan, great point. When you first get onto Orasma, there's a skip button at the top or a quick sign up. Apologies for that. Please, you do need an account. It doesn't take more than about 3 seconds to do that. Yes, Natalie. So all the content you create and the content that I create, I make all of the students in my class follow me. Now, I do teach intermediate, and my students do have a school board provided email address, so signing up is not really an issue. That could be one of the problematic pieces with Orasma, is you need to be able to have an account in order to follow somebody in order to scan the content that you make. But if I follow you now, Natalie, everything that you create, just like on Pinterest, I could scan it on my device and I could see that blended learning environment that you've created. Sorry, Jennifer, about internet issues. Fortunately, this is being recorded, so it'll be posted tomorrow. We're up to 6 people have successfully followed me on Orasma. I figured this was probably going to be that hiccup spot where it's so much easier to troubleshoot in a room, but we'll do our best. I promise you it'll be well worth it. It's so much fun. Okay, I'm going to type into the chat box. So you're going to search for Aspina Burr under Discover Auras, and the only reason I'm doing this is because I want to give some of those people that are waiting an opportunity to scan the content I've created. So after you have successfully followed me, if you hit the search button on Orasma at the bottom of the page and you put those 2, 4, 6, 7 dots over my picture, you should see a video that I recorded. And it's a video that I think is super hilarious, but I imagine you're all at home eye-rolling or laughing, I don't know. Do you hear me? Natalie, so can you say that again? So you search for Aspina Burr, and I think there's about 5 listed. The one at the very top says Aspina Burr's Public Auras. Click on that, and then click on Follow. then you should be good to go. If you've done that, you should be able to hit the back button at the top. You should be able to cancel out of there. And you should see a crosshair button somewhere on the screen that would indicate you're going into like a different scan window. When you hit the crosshairs, you'll get some dots that sort of move towards the center of the page. There's one still dot in the middle, and I think 2, 4, 6 dots around it. Hover those dots over my wonderful picture, and if you've done this right, you should see my video. And you can probably hear mine now. Do you hear me? Do you hear me? If you hear me, or see me, if you hear me and see me, if you're watching this, then you have successfully installed Aurasma and followed me. So pretty cool. I didn't have to post that video to YouTube. I recorded that video on my own device. I went into Aurasma, I created the aura, and I linked it from camera roll, and it actually uploaded to Aurasma's servers. So if you don't follow me, you will never be able to see that video. So it does give us that privacy piece, if you will, because it's not posted publicly on YouTube, and it doesn't have to be. It just sits on Aurasma's servers. I would encourage everyone to, of course, read their terms of service. I don't know what they do with that data, but there is that piece there that's not posted publicly, and if you don't actually follow along, then you don't actually see it. I'm sorry, Kelly, you can't actually see the video. And it's hard to show. I can't show you my phone screen, but okay. So 7 people have successfully followed me. Am I ready to move forward? Can I go? Can I go ahead? Give me a hands up if you want me to stop. Would that be okay? If I'm going too fast or you're not ready, just give me a hands up and we'll stop. I'm not seeing the video part. Okay. Have you successfully followed me? You'll just see moving dots doing absolutely nothing if you don't follow me first. Okay, the dots, put the center still dot that doesn't move right in the middle of that picture of my face. And if nothing happens, then you're probably not following me. Perhaps I do have multiple accounts. Perhaps you followed one of my other accounts. Yeah, if you're following the right account, I do have, I have Aspinaber. I do have a couple of different accounts. If you're following the right account, then the app's pretty seamless. You just sort of hold your device over top of my picture with that center dot that's not moving, and it'll appear. I've done it on a few different devices, so hopefully that you'll be able to figure that out. Yeah, you're right, Susan. The button at the bottom, I call it crosshairs or a camera. You have to click on that and you'll see the dots, and then you'll be able to see me. Jennifer got it to work. She said that was fun. I think it would be super cool to have parents hover a camera over a picture of their child on a bulletin board at student-led conferencing and watching a video of their thinking, whatever it is, mathematics or whatever it is. Okay. I'm going to, that was the step we needed. Great. Okay, great. I'm going to advance the slide then, assuming everybody has followed me successfully. The students do need to have accounts if they want to follow, if they have to follow you to see the content you create, the students do need accounts under this app. Now there's a few different ways around it. You can install the app on if you have a class set of devices and you can be logged into that app. Once you've logged into Aurasma, it will never ask you to log in again if you don't ever log out. So there are a few workarounds if you've got access to technology where you can install Aurasma with sort of a dummy teacher email or something, then the kids will automatically be following you because it's that same account that you math question, and it's called the handshake problem. So you have 6 people in a room that all meet for the first time, and they all shake hands with each other. How many pairs of hands were shaken without duplicates? So this would be something where I'm teaching organized lists in a math class, and I want kids to sort of figure out all of those different possible examples. Now, traditionally, I just would have given them the textbook question, or I just would have given them the smartboard question. I did evolve to a place where I had students, get up and actually try and act it out, and I thought, okay, I'm going to try this with Erasma. So I had students actually shake hands, and we created this Erasma content together, which fully immersed them into the math problem, because not only were they answering the question, but they were involved in the process of making the task for all of our intermediate students. So if you have successfully followed me, and you hover your phone over that image, you'll hear Justin Timberlake and see my question. And it'll continue to loop. As long as you hover your device over that image, the Erasma content will always stay there. So they can watch it more than once if they want. They can't pause it, but they can move the phone around a little bit. So hopefully you're able to see that. If you're not able to see that at that point, then I'm going to assume you're going to let me know. Otherwise, we're just going to keep moving forward. It's not working. I'm following you, but I can't seem to find the dots. Okay, that's bizarre. Natalie, are you on an iDevice, iPhone or iPad? And feel free to have one. Anik got it to work. That's great. Natalie, are you on an iDevice? iPhone, okay. So when you first open the app, it takes you to a page of thumbnails, and at the top it says Discover Auras, and then at the bottom there's a purple button with, I call it crosshairs, but it does look like taking a photo kind of a button. And when you click on that purple button, the screen will go black, and then pull up your camera roll. And what you see on your device is whatever you're pointing your device at, and you'll see the dots. You should hopefully see dots that are moving. There's one dot in the center that's still, and you'll see other dots that move. If you take your device and you hover it, I'm doing it again. Oh, great. All right, got it. Perfect. So now, I'm going to talk over it because you're trying to watch it. Envision now, so I've got this image on my smartboard and a classroom of kids trying to fight for a space at the front of the room to hover their device over this still image that these 6 students in my classroom actually created with me. Now, next time I'm going to have these kids actually do it without me and further engage them in the whole process of creating content and creating math content because they're so immersed into it. I did it again by accident. Apologies. Not getting the crosshairs. Okay. Lori, do you have a microphone? We can sort of troubleshoot this. The next few slides are how to create content on Erasma. So our timing is okay in terms of getting towards 9 o'clock. Again, I mean, you folks are very smart people. I'm sure that you can figure it out with the plus buttons and things like that. There's a purple button at the bottom, main part of the window, and it'll pull up those dots. Okay. All right. So here's what I did. So I had students create content with Erasma to engage in this math problem that we spent probably 45, 50 minutes working on. Then I had them actually record their own answers. What I learned through this process is Erasma has a cutoff in terms of length of video. I haven't quite determined what that is yet. But these videos that these students made in particular were a little bit too long to create Erasma content, so I went back to QR code and posted these back on YouTube. But just to give you a sense of the workflow here, creating content using augmented reality, having kids hover over the smartboard and actually seeing that math problem happen working on the math problem, recording their own mathematical thinking. Then they airdropped it to me. We threw it on YouTube, and we created the QR codes that are here. I don't think we need to spend any time watching my student solutions just because this is recorded. If you do want to, you can grab the link now, or you can come back tomorrow and watch the video and grab the recording of their mathematical thought as they worked through this problem. There's actually 2 solutions. I love the one on the right here, the fourth of my 4 solutions. These 2 girls took the lead with this group and had the kids stand up and count. So they shook hands with each other and just counted out loud and came up with 15. The group on the left, of course, went to the chalkboard and decided they were going to use a little bit of a different model, but still personalized differentiated instruction. They all solved the same problem differently with that whole wide walls, low floor, high ceiling. And now I've got this portfolio of work sitting in a QR code. I could take the QR code off this slide, like I said. I could print it tomorrow. I could, email mom that QR code, and they could actually then watch this video without having to worry about sending links and making sure your link content is proper. So we're down to about 14 minutes. If you want to create content with Aurasma, assuming that everybody can get to the scanning screen where we are with the dots, the first thing you have to do is click on the magnifying glass at the bottom, and it'll bring you back to that Discover Aurasma's window where you actually searched for me before. The top right corner, there's a plus button, and that brings you to a window that looks like you're trying to take a picture. And you'll notice at the top there's a red, a yellow, and a green, and that's just telling you that the app likes whatever you're taking a picture of. So what I do is I'll find a stock photo on my camera or my smartboard, and then I'll take a picture with my phone because I want that image to, look the same. Like I said earlier, you can use physical objects, but as soon as you move them, the app can be a little bit finicky. So if you have a Canadian flag, mounted in your room, you can use things like that, things that are stationary. So anyway, on that window, you will see a grid in the middle, and you'll see that red, yellow, green across the top, and you should see a dot that sort of moves left to right. That's the app trying to tell you that you've got a good trigger image. You go ahead and take the picture. This is a picture that's going to trigger that augmented content that you just saw. So on the next slide here, after you take a picture of any sort of object, I'm just doing it on my phone to make sure we're on the same page, and I can't get it to go green. There we go. And then on the next window, it's going to ask you to choose from their built-in library or your device. And I don't tend to use anything from the library much. I think it's just there for fun. I always head over to device, and you'll see edit and an upload button. And from here, I click upload, and then I hit photo album or camera. And at this point, this is where you have kids either record their thinking in the moment, or if they've had it pre-recorded in photo album, you can link it there. So what I've done in the past as well is I've had kids create content on their own devices and then airdrop it to mine, and then I've created the Aurasma content on this window because it's already in my own photo album there. Once you hit photo album, and then, of course, camera roll, and you select whatever video you wish. Hit choose, and it'll do its thing. And then anybody that follows you that scans that trigger image that you took will see the video that you've created. Natalie says, so you create the video first, upload it on YouTube, and then link to a QR code. That's how you use it with a QR code? Yes. So I've uploaded those student solution videos to YouTube. I've listed them as unlisted, so only people with the link can see them. And I've put the link on that QR code, and the QR code is only public to those that are watching this slide deck. Kaylee, if you loaded the app over a year ago, yeah, there's updates on Erasmus quite frequently, I've noticed, so you might want to try and see if you can get an updated version there. I found the latest version I have to be really stable compared to a couple of years ago when I was first playing around. I found it was a little bit problematic, which I thought would lead to frustrations in class, so I sort of put it aside, but lately it's been working fantastically and adds that, that visual element to not more than just a QR code, I think. So we're down to about 10 minutes. And I think I'm going to leave the last 10 minutes to playing and troubleshooting. Let me spend 30 seconds and just tell you about the next few apps. You don't have to install them tonight. You're welcome to come back. This one in particular, Elements 4D, is a really cool app that allows you to print elements from the periodic table, and kids can hover their device over the element and actually see it. So maybe it's best for a high school classroom, but it's certainly super cool and engaging in an elementary classroom, and there's no reason why we can't, explore hydrogen and oxygen in elementary school. But what's even cooler about this app is you print their printables from their website, and you build these paper blogs, and you hold their app over the paper blog, and you see that element. So now we can bring mercury into our elementary classrooms, because obviously we're not going to actually bring mercury in, but you can look at mercury because it will appear with all of the properties of that element on the app. Even cooler than that, here's an example of what a printable would look like. If you print a couple of cubes and you put oxygen and hydrogen beside each other, it will turn into water on the app. So I use that under my inquiry model in elementary school when I want to have kids explore different combinations of elements to see if they're going to get a different chemical reaction, because they actually see it happen on the app. So super cool to check out. Like I said, you print these printables, you cut them out, fold them together, tape them together, and then you have a cube. And when you scan a face of the cube, you will see that element on the app. If you put two cubes beside each other and the faces happen to be a compound like hydrogen and oxygen, you will actually see water appear. So I've had students, okay, today I want you to go and we're going to learn about salt. But what is salt actually made of? And they have to figure out that sodium and chlorine beside each other would actually make salt. So super fun activity, very engaging, and kids will find different chemical reactions and share them with you and share them with each other. So really fun. Lastly, another app. Oh, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. They have built-in lesson plans with the Elements 4D app in order to use periodic tables. Not just high school or middle school, but what they call elementary school too. It's an American app, but there are lesson plans available there. The QR code's there, and I believe Susan's going to paste that link into the chat box as well, and you can grab that for future use if you're interested in using that app and looking at some of their built-in lesson plans. They also own an app called Anatomy 4D. There's a really cool video that shows you how you can hover over a picture of a skeleton or a human body, and it will appear on the device. You can actually slide the transparency of the skin and go down to completely transparent and see the skeletal structure of the human body. You can choose what systems you want to appear, so they're listed as a checkbox. You can click on respiratory and circulatory and all of the systems of the human body, and you can actually explore them by hovering your tablets over that. Again, it's a printable. They have an Anatomy 4D printable, and you hover it over the piece of paper, and they can explore the human body in that regard. It is very detailed. Forewarning, I teach intermediate, and of course, they want to look at anatomy of, genitalia in those grades, and we turn it into a health lesson, of course. But I just want you to be aware of that piece. But super cool apps, Anatomy 4D and Elements 4D, both made by the same company. You can't create content. They've gone ahead and created the content already. But just to give you an idea of, I think, where we're headed with education and textbooks. I think this will be sort of that, textbook 2.0, if you will, the next generation. Having said that, I know that was quick at the end. We're down to about 6 minutes. I'm going to open the floor to any last-minute questions. I thank you all so much for coming to my last webinar of this school year. Hopefully I'm invited back.
Okay, so
next year. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to email me or reach out on Twitter. I'm more than happy to help you. I will be more than happy to send you this slide deck if you want to support this webinar. Of course, the recording will be posted tomorrow, but if you want to have the actual slides in Keynote or PowerPoint.
Okay, that is so bizarre. Can you hear me talking? Let me know if you can hear me talking. Okay, that's good. The microphone symbol's not showing up on my screen. Okay, well, I am talking, so okay. This is so bizarre. It doesn't appear to be from my end. Anyway, thank you all for coming. And Brian, that was an awesome session. This is a whole new world, as you've said and have said to us other times as well, in education. And it's really great to see this textbook 2.0 and see where we might be going in the future. There are so many awesome opportunities for our students.
We hear you.
And Erasma has been around, as you said, for a while. But I think your explanation tonight made it make more sense than I've ever had anyone try and explain it before, so thank you for that. Many of you are experienced, but at the end of each session we ask you to complete a feedback survey, and the link is on that screen, and I'm also going to put it into the chat. And we would ask you to please complete that. When you're finished completing the survey, you'll get an option to print a certificate if you would like to. So please do that. The resource link, so all of the links that Brian has shared tonight, I've been gathering in a Google Doc, and that gets posted on the OTF website tomorrow by noon. And future OTF sessions are also, sorry, I'm trying to do two things at one time, and I'm losing my mind here. Posted on their website. Brian mentioned earlier on in the evening that OTF is running several different events this summer. So there's a amazing three-day Technology Institute sort of conference that's happening in Markham at the end of August. Brian, are you participating in that?
No, I'm not, but you can't hear me, can you?
Yeah, I can hear you, yeah. Everything seems to be fine again now. I'm good. I'm not either actually this year because we were already booked to do something else, but it's an awesome conference. The cost is low, the accommodations are awesome, and everybody who's presenting is terrific. So I would recommend looking at the OTF website for that. There's also, as Brian said, summer institutes happening throughout the province. There's many different locations and there's many different sessions. Many of the OTF Connect presenters are in fact leading three-day Summer Institute sessions. And once again, they're just about free. Like you pay $50 up front and you get your $50 back after you complete the 3 days. And for that you get your accommodation, which is usually in a residence type thing. You get your meals and reimbursement for travel expenses. So it's a really good deal, and I can certainly say that the facilitators, I know them all from the webinars this year, they're amazing. And to spend 3 days with somebody like Brian, who clearly has a great deal to offer in a 2-hour session, can you imagine what you might get in 3 days? I would certainly recommend that you go and check those out and look for them. So I'm going to stop the recording now.